This week on the Steele Report.
Hearing that student athletes obviously want to compete, they want to be here, but they have concerns, and rightfully so.
UNI Athletic Director David Harris.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts.
And head football coach Mark Farley on the decision to move football from the fall to the spring due to COVID-19. And our program begins right now.
Now from KWWL, this is the Steele Report.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Steele Report. What a week of college football announcements. Among them, football in the Big 12, but no football in the Pac-12 and the Big 10, impacting the Iowa Hawkeyes. And of course, as we reported earlier on our newscasts, no football in the UNI Dome this fall with the Missouri Valley Conference decision to postpone fall football games and try to move them to the spring. Well, today, you're going to hear directly from UNI Athletic Director David Harris and head football coach Mark Farley on their thoughts on this unprecedented situation, including what's ahead for other sports at UNI this fall and winter. Let's begin right now with UNI Athletic Director David Harris. David, unprecedented times, obviously. Has the conference made the right decision, do you think? I know you want to be unified in this decision-making process. What's your personal feelings about not playing football this fall?
I believe we have made the right decision. I know it's tough for all of us to be in a position where we're looking at not playing football this fall, but when you're considering the unprecedented nature of what we're dealing with and you're trying to keep the health and safety of your student athletes first and foremost in your mind, but also trying to give them the best opportunity to be able to play a full season or close to a full season with a championship at stake at the end, then we knew that the spring was going to be the best opportunity to be able to do that. Now, there are no guarantees about the spring. You don't know exactly where things are going to stand with the virus when we get to the spring. But once we knew that we couldn't be in a position to have a championship in the fall, we knew the spring was the best opportunity to be able to give them a full conference season with an FCS playoff, which is what they indicated that they wanted. That's what the student athletes have shared with us. So we feel like it is the right decision.
When you first heard the news, did something go through your mind like, I really can't believe this is happening? Or, I mean, no fall football at UNI, no games in the UNI Dome. I mean, can you imagine no games in the UNI Dome? I guess I was thinking, is that what you were thinking?
You know, the interesting thing for me, and I think for all of us who have been dealing with it, is because we've been having these discussions all along, it wasn't quite the shock at the end because we've always known that this was a chance that this would happen. We've gone through a process where we've looked at all the elements and all the options, looked at the testing, looked at the health and safety considerations, and we knew that there was a chance that we could very much end up in this place. So it wasn't necessarily the shock at the end because as you go through those conversations, you know that this is a possibility. But certainly it's a disappointment when you get to a point where you actually have to make the decision and you're communicating that to people and you're talking to student athletes about it. It starts to settle in a little bit more exactly what this means. And so for us, that's certainly a challenge, but you're kind of bolstered by the hopefulness of what the spring can bring and hoping to give the student athletes a chance to be able to compete at that time.
So school starts on Monday, and so what are the plans, at least at this point, with some of the other sports? I mean, you have big sports coming up here in the fall that are huge for UNI, and what's the plan there as far as we go?
Right, so as of right now, the plan with football would be to have them continue to work out, not necessarily, having practices as of yet, but to be working out. But then for our other sports, for our fall sports that are planning to compete starting September 18th, that would be the time that they would be able to start to practice. So once classes start, then assuming that fall sports don't get moved to the spring and they are able to compete conference only starting September 18th, then they would be able to start practicing and start getting ready for the season.
What kind of financial impact has this coronavirus had on you? You've had to make staff cuts. All of you have taken pay cuts already, but this is a tough time. But going forward, is there something positive out of this that you can see? Because your donors are still there, obviously.
Certainly, it's been a tough time financially, and we're anticipating that this could have close to, if not exceeding, a $2 million revenue impact on us when you just look at all the different elements that we've had to deal with. And I'm greatly appreciative, so appreciative of the willingness of our staff to be able to take salary reductions this year and give us a chance to be able to absorb some of that revenue loss that we know we're going to be dealing with. But ultimately, we know that because the schedule changes and the plans change, and this is an incredibly fluid situation, that there may be and likely will be other revenue losses that'll be coming up, just depending on how things play out. So from our standpoint, it's certainly a challenge, but I think if there's an opportunity, is really just to solidify what great fans and supporters that we have, because many of them have already been willing to step up and help us by doing things financially to be able to assist the department. So when you have a situation where adversity comes, those that are really supporting you really step up and show themselves, and I think that's what's happening with us as well.
Why don't you just tell everybody how many sports there are here at UNI and what's your annual budget? Because you don't have the Big Ten network, you don't have the Big 12 network, all that millions and millions of dollars coming in from television revenue.
Right, we have 17 sports here and we have a $14 million budget. And so obviously we operate on a very slim budget based on what it is that we're tasked with doing and what we're trying to provide for our student athletes from an experience standpoint. And so that's one of the reasons why our supporters are really important, because they help us with that, whether it's funding, coaches' salaries, or funding scholarships for student athletes, or funding trips that we need to take. They give us an opportunity to be able to compete at the level that we compete at. So if you see University of Northern Iowa over a period of time having success in athletics and doing really positive things in the community, and really, having coaches that win Coach of the Year awards, or having players win Player of the Year awards, a lot of that has to do with the support that we get from the community, the way that they're willing to invest in us and really helping us with our budget.
Maybe it's the athletic director.
Well, I'm glad you said that, but no, I think it's about the entire community, the way that we come together, our coaches, our student athletes, our community, our staff. They all do a fantastic job of really just rallying around our university and our department and giving us a great chance to be able to have success.
How long before things can get back to any kind of normalcy, do you think? I mean, how does this change the sports going forward, the way you view athletics here at UNI? I mean, what changes are you anticipating?
You know what? If it gets back to normal tomorrow, that would be just fine with me. But I know it's not going to happen that quickly. So for us, we are preparing for this to continue on throughout the academic year. We don't know what's going to happen next year. We don't know when a vaccine will be created and be available for people. We're certainly crossing our fingers and hoping for that. But for us, when you can't control the timeline and you can't control what's going to happen, you try to control what it is that you actually have control of, and that's what you do every day. And the services that you provide to your student athletes, and the way that you conduct yourselves, and the way that you choose to compete, and the way you're preparing young people to go to class and giving them support, and the way that you're encouraging them to be safe and doing all the things that you're supposed to do in the pandemic. Coach Farley mentioned the other day about having the football student athletes be leaders on campus by doing things the right way and wearing a mask and distancing appropriately and using appropriate hygiene. All of those things are the things that we can control. So for us, it's about controlling your controllables, and the things that we don't have control over, we're going to be like everybody else and wait and see what happens. But in the meantime, we're going to do everything that we can to try to make sure that we're giving our student athletes every resource that they could need.
We will continue our discussion with UNI Athletic Director David Harris a little bit later in the show, but first we're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, Panther head football coach Mark Farley. Welcome back to the Steel Report for this week. Really think about it, it's really hard to imagine no football in the Unidome this fall, but unfortunately that is the case, and it's particularly disappointing for the UNI Panther team this year, already ranked second in the nation in all of the preseason polls. Let's hear from head coach Mark Farley. Coach, you're giving your players the week off, then what's ahead for you?
Well, I think the key right now is, one, to get prepared for classes on Monday, because I think that's going to be the key to this whole thing now, is to make sure we get into the classroom and that we stay that our university can stay in the classroom this semester. So it's making sure that we're ready for that, and the policies and the things that I think that we can be a leader in that, because we've been doing this for 8 weeks, and we just have to make sure that we help our university find a way through this so that we can stay in school as much as get into school.
So how disappointed are you and your coaches and players?
There's disappointment, there's frustration, but I think the biggest thing that you feel empathy for is, you've got redshirt seniors that, where the season was taken from them, their final season here, because they're going to graduate in December, and they're preparing for what's after football. And so we have to guide them through that and give them as much direction as we can, because this has affected every class differently. There's an impact on everybody, but it impacts everybody differently.
And then knowing you have such a great team coming back but can't play.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts. And it hurts because of what our players have put into this season. Some have invested, 5 years of their life. And just the last 5 months, what they've done is the camaraderie and the unity that they've brought together by working out on their own when this COVID started in March. I mean, they've been training together on their own outside of the dome, and it's really created a tight bond that many teams don't experience. So, let alone did we have talent, we also, I think, had great character and great camaraderie. So that's the disappointment, the hurtful part, because, they had prepared to do this and we wanted to see the results of it.
When you first heard the news, what went through your mind?
When this first came up, I don't think you ever thought it would become reality. I mean, we started this back in March, and I don't think you ever felt that it'd still be with us in August and affect our football season. So it was more the reality setting in was the hard part. Even though you had heard about the possibility, it's still the reality check when it really does happen. And then the result of is now how do you react and how do you move forward? And I think that's the key now, is getting ready to move forward.
Do you think the league made the right decision?
The key is that our league is unified in the fact that the safest thing and the best thing to do for our conference was not to play. And a lot was probably the result of other conferences deciding not to play this season, so it did affect our whole FCS division. But I still go back to our players, because what's important to us is our team, our guys, and our community, and that's what you feel bad for in the end is that loss, because it is a loss. And it's like when you get beat in the playoffs or lose a big game, it's that kind of feeling. It's just a little bit deeper wound.
And of course, you've thought about just the idea of not having football in the UNI Dome this fall.
Well, there's no question. It's hard to imagine going through this, but if I could send a message to everyone through this, what I'd say is this: where I'm really, I don't want to say sad, but where you really feel disappointed is our community, our healthcare system, our university, our athletic department here, the policies they put in, the things they tried to do to make this work. I think we're doing all the right things. We were having success in making adjustments so that we all could play this fall. So I feel bad for all that effort and all that time and the things I believe we were winning that battle. And then not to be able to really go forward and keep battling is probably what's disappointing for me, because of those people that put all that effort and time into it. I felt they deserved us as much as our players did, because we were activating and doing things the right way, I believe.
You've all taken pay cuts for a difficult situation.
This is very tough on everyone. It's tough on our athletic department. It's tough on our university. It's tough on our community. We all have to find a way to move forward together, and I think that's where our university has kind of taken the stance of forward together, and that has probably more meaning today for me than maybe it did a week ago.
And you're really grateful for the efforts just to try to get you in a position to play.
Everybody associated with this university, that is close to this university, gave us every opportunity to be successful, and they're still there in support moving forward. And that's the way that we're going to shorten the timeline of this COVID situation that we're in right now is the only way to win this battle is to move forward together and all find a way to shorten the timeline of this, because it hit us hard. It's hit many people hard, but it's kind of more of a reality check today than maybe what it was for us on Friday, this past Friday.
When you finally do get to play, you do have a great team.
Well, this team right now is number 2 in the country in preseason rankings, number 3 at worst, and it had a lot of great players, and it had a lot of great talent, and it had a lot of great character, and that character will move forward. They're not going to lose that. They just have to, grow on that. So the key to the spring, the key to the fall, well, fall is the spring now, I guess is the way to say it, but the key to this upcoming season will be able to come out of this situation stronger than we are today and take a forward-thinking mindset instead of reactive. Let's forward think and find a way to come out of this stronger, and that's the mindset that we'll take. Again, I think really the big thing for me is how thankful I am because of, there was going to be testing involved to get to the football field every week for a whole athletic department, but for the football team is what I was dealing with. And we had people trying to find a way to help us get there in any way that they could outside the university community. And then you go to the university side, our president, the committee, people were trying to find the way to get our team there safely. We didn't get the chance to really get to that field, and that's what kind of is the disappointing part, because there was a lot of effort and I think a lot of positive things that we were doing right. It's just we didn't get to keep going.
Thanks to UNI head football coach Mark Farley for his unique perspective on the delayed football season. And when we come back, more from UNI Athletic Director David Harris, as the Panthers definitely have a lot of momentum going forward if they get a chance to play. That is coming up. And welcome back to the Steel Report for this week. Let's hear more from UNI Athletic Director David Harris, because the Panthers definitely have tremendous amount of momentum going forward if they get a chance to play this year.
You don't think about it so much because of the pandemic, but if you look back on the last year that we had in UNI Athletics, we had great success with a number of different programs, from football going to the quarterfinals of the playoffs and having an excellent year and being undefeated at home, to men's basketball winning the regular season conference championship and having the player of the year and being undefeated at home, and women's basketball being in a spot where for the first time in history they win kind of the state championship, beating Iowa State and Iowa and Drake all in the same year. You look at volleyball winning a regular season championship and having the coach of the year with Bobby and the player of the year with Carly, and then you look at wrestling and what they were able to accomplish, finishing 3rd in the conference and having 2 conference champions, and then having the number 1 ranked wrestler at 184 pounds going into the NCAA tournament. We had a chance to be able to have a national champion in wrestling in back-to-back years, perhaps, if that had played out. So you add that to our track and field program that won the indoor championship, coming off of winning the outdoor championship the previous 2 years. So just a lot of phenomenal things that have happened and are happening. And so you can lose sight of that as you begin to focus on the pandemic and what it's taken away from us. But if you just step back a couple of months and look at what our student athletes and coaches were able to accomplish last year, we were on our way to having a phenomenal year, and now we get to carry the momentum forward and seeing if we can improve on that for this year.
I was just going to say the momentum is in your favor. It's just that it's been slowed down a little bit by the pandemic, but the momentum is there with some terrific things going on. Yeah.
Right. It's our responsibility to make sure that the momentum doesn't stop. It gets slowed down, as you mentioned, but we want to make sure that it doesn't stop because we feel like we have good things happening and we want that to continue.
When you look at the campus going back on Monday, which is the show airs on a Sunday, so it's the next day that they'll be back on campus, and there'll be a lot of students. Is it kind of, in some ways, you're holding your breath to kind of see what happens, hoping that it's not a negative impact?
I would say that everyone is a little bit anxious about what's going to happen when all of our students come back. I think we're excited because it's been a long time since we've seen many of them and since we've been in person. But when you look at all the planning and all of the hard work that's been done by people on our campus, by faculty and staff, people in administration, people in leadership positions, to give us an opportunity to be able to be here, to give us an opportunity to be able to try this. There's so many hours that have gone into the thoughts and the planning to be able to get us to this spot. So now when classes begin, it's an opportunity to be able to see how it all works. And so we're excited to be able to see it, and we're excited to be able to see our students. But there's obviously a little bit of anxiousness about exactly how it's all going to work, because nobody's had a chance to be able to do this. Nobody knows exactly how this is going to turn out and what the challenges are going to be. But I feel like we have the right people in place that whatever the challenges are going to be, just campus-wide, we have great leadership in place with President Nook, and I know that we'll make the right decisions to get us through whatever situation may ultimately come up.
It's going to be a pretty crowded spring, isn't it, for athletics?
It could potentially be a very crowded spring depending on exactly what happens and what sports ultimately end up getting moved to the spring. So if that's the situation, we'll figure that out. We've already begun those conversations about, okay, how do we use our facilities if all of these sports are competing at the same time, and how do we make the decision, you know, who's going to have priority in the facility, and we're laying out a game plan for how that's all going to work, because you need to have those plans in place even before the reality hits you about what it's going to be. So for us, it's just a part of the constant planning process that we've been going through for the past 4 or 5 months, where you're planning for scenarios and you don't know if that scenario is exactly going to work out. It could be exactly what you're expecting. It could be something completely different. So you find yourself preparing for everything, even though you know that only one of these things is actually going to happen, and you do the best that you can to prepare for all eventualities and make sure that you have the appropriate people in place.
Going back, the financial impact of this, do you anticipate any layoffs, or are you okay for now? I mean, you don't get a lot of help from the state of Iowa on this, yeah.
Well, for us, the good news to this point has been that we have not had to lay anyone off, although we've had some positions that we have kept open. But as the financial reality continues to evolve and decisions are made, then that may change over a period of time. You know, we're in a position where we were scheduled to play the University of Iowa in football, and not playing that game, there's a financial reality to that for us. If you look at football being moved to the spring, while we will still have an opportunity to be able to make money during football season, it also depends on what the parameters are going to be able to put things in place. For instance, the governor's most recent proclamation said that if you're going to be in these mass gatherings, you have to be 6 feet apart. So we have to be able to seat the Unidome with people being 6 feet apart. And in doing that during the spring season, then your capacity is going to be, you know, much, much less. And so it's going to have an impact on you financially. So you look at those things, and that might lead to you having to make other decisions to face the financial reality of what's going on.
What would you like our community to know about what's going on here in the pandemic as far as moving forward with UNI Athletics?
The biggest thing is, one, we greatly appreciate their patience and their continuing willingness to support us as we figure things out, as we make decisions, as we try to find the best way to support our student athletes. We know that when you make changes and you're doing things differently, then it's adjustment not just for us, but for them as well. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that we understand that sports are a big part of our society and a big part of their lives. And so when we're making these decisions, we know that if we're doing something different, if we have a change, then it's a change for everyone. But the health and safety of our staff and our student athletes, that's always going to come first. We may not always make the exact right decision, but we're always putting in a lot of time and a lot of thought and a lot of preparation into everything that we do. And we're always going to try to make the very best decision that we possibly can. We're always going to be respectful of the young people that come to compete here, and we always want to be respectful of the people who pay to come and see our sporting events and really give us a chance to be able to compete at a high level. So really just want to say thank you and show our appreciation on behalf of the entire department for everything that the people that support us do each and every day. It just gives us a chance to be able to try and do what we're doing through a challenging situation.
And thanks again to Athletic Director David Harris and head football coach Mark Farley for being on the show today as UNI begins fall classes tomorrow on the Cedar Falls campus. And we'll be back here next week for another edition of the Steel Report. Thanks for watching.